right, welcome to today's episode of the Australian Lawn and Garden Podcast. We have Chloe Thomson, garden coach, YouTuber, former podcaster. What don't you do, Chloe?
I know. There's a bit of a running joke that I'm the horticulturalist of many hats. So, yeah, the list goes on.
Well, talking about hats, I told you this beforehand, but hats go on your head, and you definitely don't wear a hat because, as far as my wife is concerned, you have amazing hair. You
Oh,
had you on. I was watching your YouTube on the TV. And she walks into the room, and the first thing, like you're explaining gardens, you're talking about horticulture and things completely not hair related, and she's like,
yeah.
"Wow, that lady has really nice hair." And I didn't tell you this as well. Is that later on we're watching a different video, and she was commenting on your jumper, and she's like, "She's got a nice fashion sense as well." I'm like, "Wow, this is
Oh,
it's
she's
about
nice.
gardening, right?" I thought
Oh,
I'd
that's
start with
lovely.
that. So. You said you get messages about your hair as well. So
I do. Yeah, I get messages about what do you do to your hair? And I'm like, I just wet my hair and it curls. So, and I do put a hat on when I'm out in the garden. Like, I actually, yeah, it doesn't look like this when I'm in the garden, actually gardening.
no, you've got to protect your skin.
Yeah.
Wide brim hat,
Yes, wide brim hat. Yes.
probably
Yeah.
a big Bunnings ones. Hey, I'm guessing.
It's not a bunning ones. It's just one of those. It's squashable, but it's like a grassy type one made from that seagrass or something. Yeah.
Well, I was asking. The reason why I said Bunnings is because you've actually done quite a bit of stuff with Bunnings. Like, because you were doing the podcast in lockdown. I saw on your
Yep.
Instagram that they had. Was it your garden that they put in their magazine?
Yeah. So that was back in, oh gosh, I think it was the March or the April edition. They sent a photographer out and Tammy Huynh wrote the article. And yeah, it was just about my garden, the backyard makeover. And yeah, I did a podcast for them during lockdown. I think we did about 9 episodes. And of course, being lockdown, I did that from my bedroom and with this microphone that I'm talking on now. And I remember that the sound engineers, when we sent them a few tests, they said that at the time I was working from my bedroom. We didn't have this studio I'm sitting in now.
Yeah.
And they said my bedroom was a bit echoey, so we had to hang up the doona. So
Yeah.
it's actually hilarious. I've got these pictures of me in like tracky dacks, doona hanging behind me, and I'm chatting to Paul West. It's quite funny.
yeah. You gotta like. I mean, I've got the same thing where when we first started the podcast. So this is my shed, right? And when I first started the podcast, it was in my living room, just because that was the space that I had, and I had to. You catch it in some episodes where I didn't quite get it right, but directly behind where the camera pointed, we had like all the kids' toys, right? And so every episode, I just had like kick all the kids' toys out of camera angle and then record. And I remember there was this one episode where it was behind my shoulder. And if I moved, it was like, bam, red kid's toy, bam, red kid's toy in the back. Very professional, So I also felt really sorry for my wife because like these podcasts can go for a while. And anyway, I was always trying to do it between kids' naps. And then,
Yeah.
it's like
The
an hour and a
juggles.
half of please don't make noise in the living room, which is, So, the professional side of the industry, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. The things we do, hey?
So how did you get that gig with Bunnings? Like, were you affiliated with them before?
I think I'd done a few in-store workshops for them. Someone at Bunnings obviously knew me. I think they often ring me for quotes in their magazine, their in-store magazine.
Yeah.
Quite often when you read the articles, it'll be like, Chloe Thomson, horticulturalist, recommends this. And so they'll often ring me for quotes. So I think I was just on their radar because of that. And yeah, they just rang and said, do you want to do an audio test first, read this script out, send it through. And then they said, yep, let's do it. I think they did intend to go more than 9 episodes, but they sort of, I think, reached the point where lockdown released, like it was really, really harsh in Melbourne where I am, but it released pretty much everywhere else. So I think they were like, well, we don't really need a podcast and the podcast was called Staying Grounded. So it was really about like staying grounded during tough times. And a lot of the speak and things that we were talking about were, gardening when you have to stay in. And so it didn't really make sense if the rest of Australia was out and about and it was only us poor Melburnians and Victorians that were stuck.
Yeah, it's a niche industry as well, because you're never going to get like crazy listenership on such a specific podcast, right? So I wonder if they were also, just the numbers guy behind me was like they were hoping for, billions and billions of listens. But it's
Who
probably one
knows?
of those. Well, it's probably one of the things that the people who do listen absolutely love it,
Yeah,
and probably miss it, and
yeah.
it's just how it's how it is on the internet.
Exactly, yeah, and you never know quite how their marketing brains work, so who knows? They loved it. I
Yeah,
know they loved it. I got great feedback, and they did say it went really well in the charts when we were on, but who
yeah,
knows? Who knows?
yeah. Well, so you're a horticulturist. You're like, these are one of the things. You're a gardening coach. What does that even mean?
Well, I pretty much say garden coach because it's a good way to describe what I do through Sprout School and my membership. So during lockdown, so back in 2020, I created Sprout School, which is an online gardening course, short course, designed to help people become better and more confident gardeners. I was finding that particularly during lockdown, but in general as well on Instagram,
Yeah, yeah,
I would get questions. And a lot of the time they were things like people would take a photo of a spot in their garden and they'd
yeah,
be like, what should I plant here?
yeah,
And
yeah,
I'd
yeah.
reply back, yeah, like, and I'd reply back with, well, what way does it face? What's its orientation? And they're like, I don't know. And then they'd reply, then I'd go, okay, well, what's your soil type like? And they'd go, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, well, I
Yeah,
can't really help you if you can't answer me with those two things.
yeah.
Um,
I get these sort of things with clients as well. Like sometimes you go to someone's house and they're like, "Hey, I want to put something in there." I'm like, "Well, do you have any? Like, do you know what you like, right? Like, yeah." And they're like, "No, not really." I'm like, "Well, do you like flowers? Let's
yeah,
start with there. Do you want something of flower? Do you not care about flowers? Do you want something that's like a standard green, or do you want like a different color?" And it's funny.
yeah,
It's like I want something in there. It's like, okay, well, you ask 3 or 4 questions, and they have no idea, like no
yeah,
idea what they want. They're just like, "Can you put something in there?" I'm like, "Well, yes, technically, but will you be happy? I don't know." And it's funny. People are pretty. They know what they like when they see it, but
yeah.
they have no idea what they
No.
like about it, right?
Yeah, and that's one whole module in Sprout School is we go through looking at planting styles, planting themes. I get people to create Pinterest boards or a Canva
Yeah.
board or even a classic, snip out pictures from magazines. However it floats your boat, just create some sort of a mood board. And then also understanding like the right terminology that goes with that style or theme that you're going for so that you then can search more for it, or you can say to people, I'm looking for plants for my tropical vibe garden, or I'm looking
Yes.
for plants in
Yeah.
my, cottage garden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing that comes to mind as well, I mentioned briefly before we started recording, is a lot of the people on here are they're contractors, and a lot of people who are listening to the podcast are people who have just gotten into the industry, or they're trying to
Mhm.
learn. Maybe they've gone from being a chef or a mechanic or something like that, and they've jumped into the industry
Yeah.
because perhaps they loved doing their own lawn, for example, and now they're a
Yes.
lawn mowing contractor and they want to learn about the gardening side of it, and they don't have the confidence and all that sort of stuff. Is your Sprout School something that would be relevant to that market? Because it sounds like there's a lot of stuff in there that would be helpful, right?
100%. It would be relevant for that sort of a market. In the last round that I did, whoops, sorry, I just bumped the microphone with my waving hands.
That's okay.
Um,
Well, I didn't hear it, so I don't know.
you didn't
It
hear it?
sounded
Okay, there you
no.
go. Yeah, it definitely would suit those kind of people. In the last round of Sprout School, I actually had a student who'd done Cert 3 in horticulture,
Yeah.
and she wrote to me afterwards and she goes, Sprout School was better than Cert 3 in Hort. And I went,
Right.
whoa, okay. She goes, it was just good because it was a small group. It was really personal. We could chat more. She said she really liked the way I explained things. So we take people through light, soil, orientation, planting styles, design styles. I take people through fertilizing 101, which is quite often up to a lot of
Yep.
people.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's 101, but then a little bit more.
Well, I was gonna get to I'll get to Cert 3 in a second, because my experience having hired a bunch of people over the years who have horticulture, whatever cert 2, cert 3, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
it it is such a mixed basket in terms of, yeah, like we've had people 20 years experience, qualified horticulturalist, and it's like,
Yes.
man, like somebody else who's got 5 years and nothing knows more than you, because just, yeah. But before we get into that, coming back to your sprout school side of it, so
Mm.
because it's not, the little bit I've learned about it just through being on Instagram
Mm-hmm.
is because you've got Facebook groups as well, right? That you're part of. Is that right?
Yeah.
So,
So,
so explain it a little bit, because it's
yeah.
not.
So
It's,
I know.
yeah, you go.
No, that's all right. It can be a little confusing. So Sprout School is my 8-week online gardening course. That's 8 specific modules. Well, 7, that one of them broken into 2 parts because otherwise it's too long. So over those 8 modules, you'll learn all about different aspects of gardening and build your confidence in your knowledge. And then what I do is while that course is on, I run a 10-week private Facebook group. So everyone who is in Sprout School for that round is in that private Facebook group. And during that, what I do is I tell everyone, hey, watch module 1 if you can today, or, over the next 7 days. And then 7 days after that module, then we have a live Q&A session via Zoom.
And that's the sort of stuff that I think is where the benefit comes from, with my experience of like training people over years, because like I can show someone a video and it's like, some people will just get it and some people won't. But when you can ask your questions, when there's other people around, like, those, the internet's making things a lot more, the learning process, there's a lot more of a community involvement. Right. Whereas when we grew up and it was schools, like one person at the front's telling you everything, and if you didn't catch it, stiff bickies, like you stuff from there on. And I think that's really cool. Like that's probably where you're getting that feedback. Now, how many of these do you do a year?
So this year I'm doing 2. So I did an autumn and I'm doing a spring. I might try and do 3 next year. We'll see. But autumn and spring seem to be when most people are really pumping and thinking about gardening. Summer people are like, I'm on holidays. I want to be on holidays. Go away, leave me alone. Winter, look, to me, winter is the perfect time to get out there, get dirty. Yes, you're not going to sweat like a pig, but you probably do need a rain jacket. But
a lot of people, you're wet either way. It's either your sweat or the rain. Yeah.
But I think a lot of people, just don't necessarily think about gardening in wintertime. So I'm doing autumn and spring at the moment. We'll see. Last round had 30 students in it. 30 students is probably, I don't really want to go many more than 30. Yeah. So I really probably will start capping it if we're going to get, probably if we got over 40, I'd say we're going to cap it. It's just really nice because I get to learn the people's names. I get to learn their gardens, because in the Facebook group, they're posting photos of their gardens. They're asking specific questions to their gardens. And it's a lot easier when I can remember who they are and where they're from.
Yeah, well, because I feel like, personally speaking, that people have got a great opportunity with a course like that and doing something in there. If you're going to go from 0 to intermediate, being, the way that I would do it is to have something like what you're doing, and then just try and transform my garden. So have a budget, if I can, to transform my own garden while I'm doing that. And then you have the confidence to, you can ask those questions. It's relevant to, because like over here in WA, the soil is just so different. The temperatures, the conditions are just so different that, you can, that's just back to, you can watch a video, you can hear somebody in a lecture or whatever tell you great advice, but you always, there's always a little bit of doubt unless you have experience with your climate as to whether or not it's even relevant to what you're doing, so.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, the students that I've had in the past, some of them have been absolute novices, like they've come to me and I'm like, show me a picture of your garden. And they're like, it's literally a dirt patch. They're like, that's my garden. There's nothing there. And then others have come to me and shown, there was a gorgeous lady last time who had a beautiful little courtyard in Wollongong. And, she showed me the photo and she goes, I'm blah about my garden. She said, I've tried a few things. As you can see, there's a dead pot over there. There's something over there that's died. I can't even work out, so she's just really down about her garden and her gardening attempt. And
Right.
it completely turned around by the end of Sprout School. And then, yeah, I've had people like who've done Cert 3. I've had people who are like 60, 65, who are semi-retired and have always been passionate gardeners. And they actually said to me they just like Sprout School as an opportunity to learn more because, I mean, gardeners, we are always learning.
Yeah.
And also just hang out with other people who like plants and gardening. So I was like,
Yeah.
fair enough.
Get a community. How many
Yeah.
how many people do you get? My assumption would just be that most of the people would be, Sydney, Melbourne, just general population, because there's a lot of people in those areas. But do you get a lot of people in random places, like say, like Darwin, Alice Springs, Kununurra, or something like that?
I have not had anyone from the NT, and I have not had anyone further north than, she'll probably kick me because I'm fairly sure she's not as far north as Townsville. Oops.
That's pretty north.
Yeah, I am. But I have had WA, I've had Adelaide, Tasmania, Canberra, Queensland, New South Wales. Yeah, pretty much everywhere, just not NT. But yeah, really, really varied group, really.
What's the most common misunderstanding that people have, especially strong ones, where people come to you, they really, really think something's right, and then it's just not right?
So in Sprout School, a lot of the time it's things like they'll say to me, particularly in the first week when I'm asking people to introduce themselves, they'll post a photo, and they haven't done any modules yet. They're just introducing themselves, and they'll
Yeah.
post a photo of their garden, and they'll be like, this area of my garden is going to be my entertaining space. I'm going to put the barbecue patio over here, and I'm going to put this. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then we do module 1 and 2, and then they go back and they go, yeah, so that's actually my shade garden. Or, no, that's actually now my veggie patch because that's full sun. So, yeah, a lot of the time it's just people's preconceived ideas about what they want where, because it doesn't work when we go
So
and
it's
look
like,
at a light and orientation.
yeah, so like location, orientation, light. That's interesting because you do. I mean, do you get a lot of people as well, but just about location, like climate, where they saw something on Instagram and they were like, "I want that hydrangea in my property," and it's like, that is not the right spot,
Yeah, sometimes there is a bit of that. And again, we talk a lot about, the right plant for the right place. And I mean, a lot of the time, once they understand the available light, the soil type, and then just actually get their head around their climate or how to search for things in their climatic zone, then yeah, they stop asking for random plants in the wrong climatic zone.
Yeah. One of my pet peeves. We work in a suburb that's it's on a it's a very small hill, but there's a long sort of sweeping gradient. So all the houses sort of have quite a high wall because there's maybe a 6 foot tall retaining wall and then a 6 foot tall fence for the house behind it, right? And the hill goes down from east to west,
Yep.
and so that sort of northern corner of the property gets an incredible amount of shade, right?
Yep.
And it may not get any sunlight at all. And these are small blocks, and you know what it's like. Everybody wants a lawn, so everybody
Yep.
just plants the whole thing out with lawn, and then they come back to us and they're like, "Hey, this area is struggling. What can we do? Should we aerate it? Can we, whatever? Is it bugs? That's a common one. Are the bugs killing my lawn? It's
Blame it
like,
on the bugs.
yeah, everything's blamed on the bugs, and it's just like you just can't grow lawn there. And it's funny how it takes them a while to come around to the idea. Sometimes
Yeah.
like there's no light. Like, what do you? Yeah,
No.
exactly.
Look, and one of the biggest things is if you purely looked at the north, south, east, west orientation and you didn't do things like observe the sun's movements, consider the change in the angle of the sun between winter and summer, or consider the slope of the block. Like technically, if you look at a flat picture of my property, my backyard is on the south side of my house. So you would presume, just looking at a flat picture of my property, that the south side of my house would theoretically be the shady side of my house. But the south side of my house is a north-facing slope. So it's actually the
Right.
sunniest.
Right, yeah, because I've seen you had a video on with Gardening Australia where
Yep,
they
they
came to
came
your
to follow me.
house,
Yeah.
and for some strange reason, you basically built your house on the side of a cliff, right?
Yeah, I know. I didn't build it, but yes, it is basically a cliff.
You
Yeah.
had to have like a harness and straps just to walk out to do the washing. You know,
Pretty
it's
much
like
like this.
pretty
So
insane. Yeah.
I think when we got my dad, who's an engineer, to help us with the calculating the rise and the run of the steps in the backyard, he said it's about a 33-degree slope. So
Oh, yeah, that's insane. That's yeah. And I love sport. Tour de France is on right now. Like some of the most insane climbs they've got in the Tour de France are about 11-12% sort of thing. I mean, they've got bits where like short runs that'll be more than that, but 33% is insane. You watch those guys cycling, late at night, and you're like, gee, I felt sorry for that presenter. It's
I
like,
know, poor Jane, I know, and the bit where she's walking up our driveway,
yeah,
so they could get the different camera angles because they only had one camera. Of course, she had to do it like 5 different times, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm so sorry.
yeah, she was struggling. She's not the youngest person out there, and I was like, man, this is funny.
Yeah,
I don't know if did she know what she was getting into before? Like
she
she had,
yeah,
oh, she
yeah.
did good. Okay.
She knew what she was. I've known Jane for like 16, 15 years. So she's beautiful.
I thought it would be hilarious if like some producer, like she didn't know you or anything. Some producers just be like, "Oh, there's a garden. We're going to go have a look at it," and she's like, "No, like completely unaware." Rocks up in high heels or something like that.
Thankfully,
Yeah,
Jane is a lot more practical than that.
yeah, but you know what I mean. It would have been
Yeah,
hilarious. Oh man. So
yeah,
yeah, so you're talking about the orientation of the sun. So your house, because it's on a hill,
yeah,
all the south-facing stuff that you would genuinely consider would be shaded. The gradient is so strong that it's
yeah.
actually fully exposed, basically full sun.
Yep. So if I stand at the very back of my block, on my back lawn, I'm actually higher than my house.
Yeah.
So that's how steep it is. So yeah, that's a perfect example of that. And then because of my slope, I have little microclimates, little pockets, where it's really shaded, where it's really sunny. And that's something that again we talk about a lot in Sprout School, is looking for those little microclimates and then using them to your advantage. I've got a bamboo shady garden 3 meters up the hill. I have a cacti and succulent garden.
Yeah. Wow. So
Yeah.
that's fun for somebody who's a garden lover too, because you can, you know, we're all like this. Like you go in the shops and you see the beautiful plant, and you're like, "Oh, I want to buy that one," and then you
Yeah.
just got no place for it, and so damn it. And we try. Some of
Yeah.
these behind me, these indoor plants, I knew they'd be risky because there's only a tiny window here, and it's all artificial
Ah,
light.
right.
And I was like, "Oh, I know some of these will work because I've done them indoors before." Some of them, the other thing is I put a heaps of insulation on the roof,
Mhm.
which is very good at keeping the shed really cold. And so
Right.
in winter, and I'm like, so I've just thrown these places, some of these plants, they'll probably come back when spring, when it warms up a little bit. But, you're just like, I don't know if it will work, but I'm going to give it a crack anyway. I'm going to try. And it'd be fun. My property is nothing like yours. It's flat. It's I can't experiment too much, and so it would be fun from someone who loves gardens to be able to go. Oh, I'm going to have a full shade. I've got a full shade spot, which is a bit colder, maybe at the bottom of the hill, and I've got a
Yeah.
full sun spot at the top, and you've got a bath at your
I do
house.
have a bath. I have an outdoor tub. It's my favorite place.
Well, being at the top of the hill, like I don't know how the privacy is.
Don't worry, I wear swimmers.
Okay, good.
And like our backyard is kind of bizarre in that you can see back the people who live behind us because their house is even higher than ours. But we've been on their balcony and you can't see like into our garden or anything like that. So it is actually quite private, and we are best friends with neighbours on both sides. So
That's good.
it's not that
Yeah.
bad.
So that you can just send them a text message.
Yeah, warning.
Exactly. Yeah. Shield your eyes. Don't look, please.
Yeah, yeah.
So your biggest misconception then is the light orientation. I would have thought it would be soil.
Look, soil is pretty much the next. Is the next
Yeah.
thing down on the card. Probably being a WA, you're thinking soil or
Well,
sand. Should it be?
yeah, with soil, it's ambitious to call it soil. I mean,
Yeah.
you're being
This
very
practical.
friendly there to us. Yes.
Yeah. Look, and soil is probably one of the next big things. We cover it in Sprout School. I make people play with their soil. They do all sorts of things with their soil they probably have never done with their soil before. And we're basically, by the end of Sprout School, we try and classify it using the soil classification pyramid. So we try and give their soil a name. I get them to understand their soil. Is it sandy? Is it loamy? Is it clay? Is it full of rocks? Is it free draining? So, just getting your head around that. And that misconception that I've heard so many times when I've done like public talks or even on Instagram, people say things like, I've got a clay soil and I can't grow anything, or because I've got a clay soil, I can't grow anything. And you think,
Right.
no. You just
You
got to
just
choose
need,
the right
yeah.
plants.
Do you know when I first started my business, all I really did was mowing lawns. Like I think a lot of people are just like that. Mowing lawns, basic mulching stuff, things like that. That gets tiring pretty quickly. At least that was what my experience was. And the reality is that when I changed my model from being someone that just did lawn mowing to just did basic gardening services to somebody who could identify and solve issues and do product applications, two things happened. One, I made a lot more money per hour. Clients are much more willing to pay higher money for weed control, fungicide applications, fertilization, all that sort of stuff. They see it as a more technical, rightly so, more technical and thus more valuable service. So way higher hourly rates when doing those services. The second thing that happened is it reinvigorated my passion for the industry, because I went from somebody who was just doing lowly mowing jobs, seen as a low life in society by some, others not. But yeah, you know what it's like if you're in business. To somebody who could solve people's problems, to somebody who could actually help them get a beautiful place to live. And I went back to really, really enjoying my job again. What's really cool is that we have a sponsor that literally sells every single product that I have used and use right now in my lawn care packages for my clients. And I'm honored to have them as a sponsor because the Lawn Shed, which is the sponsor, they're backed by and a partner business to the Living Turf, which is Australia's largest lawn product supplier. The thing about this, though, is that the Lawn Shed has a trade login and they have literally designed their website and their service around small businesses. I don't know of any other business that is literally dedicated solely to small businesses. And the thing that is really great is some of you might be listening to this going, I don't know how to do product applications. That's way too technical. They've got expert advice, people who are actually willing to answer your questions. And what you will find is you're going to learn very quickly going and buying a couple of bags of fertilizers, asking for some advice, applying it on your own lawn, testing it out on some friends, seeing the results, getting the confidence from that. Same with all the other products that they could sell. That's exactly what I did, honestly. Tried it on family, tried it on my own lawn, got experience with it, asked people to use it before, went out and used it, got those amazing results. And that was the start of me turning my business from something that was, making money, but not, I didn't really love it, to something that was making great money. And I really did enjoy it. If you go on the Lawn Shed, and this sounds like something that's going to help your business, sign up to their trade account, because there's some products that you won't see on the normal account. They only provide it to small businesses. Through the trade account, they will prioritize you as a small business compared to other people or other businesses out there. And if you go and sign up, say that you heard us from the Australian Lawn and Garden podcast, and that will support us as a podcast. I genuinely am glad to have that as a partner, because the reality is that it's a true story, close to my heart, and it is genuinely something I believe in, not just a cash grab like some other sponsorships might have been. So jump on them, the Lawn Shed, the trade section, jump there. Let's get back into the podcast. So what would be a really good plant? Because I'm clueless on this. Like everything here is like you've
Sand.
got to it's sand. I mean, up the hill, I'm not far away from a hill where there is actually a lot of clay, but it's
Yeah.
literally in some pockets, and it's those areas are like clay and little what is it, like stone pebble things?
Just like
Anyway,
shale or gravel or.
no, it's gravel. It's pea gravel. That's the word I'm looking for.
Oh, right. Yeah. I'm picturing what you mean.
Yeah, so it's like it is tough growing conditions, and then they get these
Yeah.
little valleys
Yeah.
It was quite lumpy, where it's like beautiful soil in the bottom of the valley where it's all collected, but everything on top of the hill is just washed off from rain over time, and that's
Yeah.
difficult. But the vast majority, 99% of the rest of us is just sand. So I know what to do with sand, but what do you do with waterlogged, clayey, rubbish, difficult
Look,
drainage?
essentially plant into it. Grow something that tolerates your climate and that soil type. When you plant into a clay, you're actually helping to improve its structure. So those plants' roots will actually, push down into the clay. They will form little channels through the clay, and they'll help to bring air and nutrients into the clay. Yeah, it's that misconception that you can't grow stuff in clay. You just need to look for a plant that works in that environment. And I mean, so many of the Aussie natives, even the classics like the, callistemons and grevilleas and a lot of the grasses will work really well in heavy clay soils. There's a lot of marshland or bogland plants that work if you've got like a really waterlogged heavy clay. You just need to go looking for they might be called wetland plants or marshland plants.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
It's really just a case of looking up the right thing or asking for the right thing.
Do you have like go-to plants for certain situations? I know that I do, where I've got a couple of favorites. Yeah, and for us, typically, if clients are asking us to do a planting, because we're not landscapers, we're maintenance people, right? So it's usually a small little thing. They've had a little problem. We don't take on massive landscaping jobs.
Yeah.
And so there's a common one. So one of my favorite go-tos is liriope.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's for most people who have had a problem spot, the liriope will just survive, and it can handle all sorts of abuse, and it's very low maintenance. And we basically just, probably half of everybody who's like, I've got a problem spot, I want something green in there. It's like, throw liriope. It's native. It's what's, and they're like, good, and they're happy, So, what are your go-to plants where it's like you probably recommend them too much, but you just love them? They're just so good. They're
Look, there's a number. I'm a huge fan of the myoporums, the ground covers, or the creeping boobiala, as they get called, which I think is the most hilarious common name. So let's go with myoporum. I like the fine leaf and the broadleaf. The broadleaf I really love as a ground cover, and it's quite hardy. It can cascade over the sides of paths, and it can tolerate being stepped on. Whereas the fine leaf form I love as a cascading plant, like to soften the edges of retaining walls and things like that.
I was going to say with your funny name there, callistemon. I only realized this a couple of years ago, but obviously stymon is the female reproductive part of the plant, and calli means beautiful, which is basically all those little stymens that come out. And I was like, hold on a second, that's basically saying beautiful ovaries. I was like, what the heck? Okay. Technically speaking, that's what it means, doesn't it? Because I was having someone explain to me, because it's like, the bottle brush, it's all the stymens, it looks so pretty, that's what they called it. And I was like, okay, yep, sure. So now I've ruined that plant for you forever, haven't I?
Yeah, no, you have. Thanks for that. Yeah.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Myoporums are a big one I love. I do love a good old Poa lab. Planted in, not necessarily en masse, so it looks like a highway planting of poas.
Well, I'm gonna chuck. I've decided. Well, I'm gonna chuck these on the screen if I can.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Can you see it? There we go. Look.
Yeah,
I'm a professional.
Wow, that's fancy. I didn't know you could do that at the same time. That's cool.
Well, I can, but I'm very slow. Everyone who listens to this podcast knows that at some point I'm going to have a technical hiccup if I try anything too difficult. So this is myoporum.
That's myoporum, yes.
So, beautiful flowers.
It's got really pretty flowers. Yep.
And when do they come in?
Pretty much year round. I reckon mine flowers for about 9 months of the year. And the bees love it. That's the broadleaf form there. So you can see its leaves are kind of broader. The fine leaf form has the same pretty little flowers, but much softer leaves. So the softer leaves of the fine leaf form, I find that they cascade over things, like over rocks or over particularly retaining walls. They're really, really pretty.
There we go. Like this, right? Is that right? Look at me go. I'm a professional here.
Hang on. How do I make you bigger?
I'm just permanently small on your view now.
I'm like, how do I make your screen bigger? Yeah, that looks like the fine leaf form. It's tricky to see in that photo.
I will
Um,
zoom in. Oh, that was the photo quality is
it's
rubbish.
pixelated. That's not going to work.
I've just congratulated myself and then just got the worst picture up.
Oh, but
Anyways,
it's a very similar plant. It's just a lot softer. So that's a bit. I'm a big fan of that one. The
what about
Power Lab.
with the maintenance as well? So one of the things
Mhm.
about these sorts of plants that I frustrates me about ground covers is when
Mhm.
you start getting the weeds poking through, and it's so much harder to maintain the garden because if you got to do a little bit of a spray, that's not really an option anymore. You've
No.
got to hand pull them, and it is so hard to get out the roots when you've got you know for those watching, for those listening. So you've got like this much ground cover and then this much
Yep.
leaf, and you can only grab the top of the leaf. You can't get right down to the roots. Are these
Yep.
ones that are dense enough that the weeds don't come through?
Yeah, I find I don't get any weeds coming through the myoporium at my place. The only thing that I will get occasionally popping through is some charming oxalis, particularly at this time of the year being winter. The
Charming
other thing,
oxalis, frustrating oxalis, more like
I
it.
know, I know, I'm making evil eyes for those who aren't watching. Um,
That would be
but yeah,
sour sob. Some people call it, right?
soursop, yeah, it's actually
Yeah,
edible. So I mean, if you want to go and eat the leaves, go for your life.
it's the
Um,
classic yellow flowers. Is that the one we're talking
yeah.
about? Yeah,
That's the
cool.
one we're talking about. Yep, and it's got that little bulblet under the ground that if you don't pull the bulblet out, then
Yes,
yeah.
it's back next
So
year.
it's back next year. Look, my biggest tip with oxalis is try not to let it flower. So if you can, even if you just pull the leaves off and you're not managing to get the bulblet, you're knocking the bulblet around. So
Yes.
you're starving the bulblet. And I find in areas where I get like an oxalis forest over winter, I might hit it with like the organic herbicide slasher, which I'll use at my place, or I might smother it with some, wet cardboard. You can even use old black builder's plastic to smother it. But if you can stop it flowering, even if you're just pulling it out, if you can just stop it flowering, next year it's not going to come back anywhere near as vigorous. And that repeat control of it, I find, is the best.
Yeah, I've got this interesting thing going on where I've got some of this in my lawn now. For the last couple of years, I've been using like a pre-emergent herbicide to prevent the weeds from coming up. It
Yep.
doesn't work on anything with a bulb. It only works on things with that are grown from seed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I always get this oxalis coming through. Now, for those who listen, they know that I've cut my lawn like a mini golf course that we play with like kids plastic golf clubs. So I've got
Yep.
a green that's cut at like 7 mil, 8
Yep.
mil, and then most of the lawn is about 18 mil, and then the higher parts is much taller. And
Mm-hmm.
I literally have a interesting cross section about basically what you're saying, where I've had to cut the green more often because of the
Yep.
height of it, and I'm getting almost no weeds in there. I've not put any weed control down on my lawn for a couple of years now.
Yep.
Right. The section in the middle that is being cut at 18 millimeters, I'm not getting that much, but I'm getting more. And in the longer section that I'm hardly cutting at all, that's where it's coming through and all that sort of stuff. So I would
Yep.
even wonder if you were time poor and you've got a couple coming through, you've got the whippersnipper out and you've already done the lawn, you
Yep.
probably could just run around and whip those ones that are poking through and actually get some benefit then if you're just trying to starve that bulb really.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, look, if you follow that old adage that 1 year's seed is 7 years weed.
Yeah.
So if you, it's an oldie but a goodie. It's so true. Like if you have a forest full of weeds that are in full flower and full flight, then you watch out because next year your problem's going to be, 7 times as worse. Not
Do you
just worse.
well let's go back before I ask that next question and completely take us down a rabbit hole. What was the other one you said? Power something.
Oh, so I said Power Labs, Myoporum, and
How do I spell Power Labs?
I am shocking at spelling. So Poa, it's Poa, and just type in
Oh
L
yeah.
LAB, and then it'll bring it up. It's Labradorili.
Yeah. We're professionals.
I know.
We know what we're doing.
But seriously, sometimes botanical names, you're like, there's too many L's and like too many blah, 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 blah.
And then here, see, now I've got the technical issues. I can't remember which screen I'm supposed to click. There we go.
There you go. Yeah, there it is. Look, the thing I love about this grass, it is a true grass. It's often called common tussock grass. So there's a couple of different cultivars around as well. So you can get sort of really tall ones, smaller clumping ones, some with a fine leaf, some with a broader leaf.
Yeah.
The thing I love about it is I sort of have it planted in little clusters in a little grassland that I have in my backyard. And in spring, it's bright green. It grows all throughout summer, bright green, bright green, bright green. Come autumn and the end of summer, it starts to bronze off, and you get those lovely seed heads, floaty seed heads above it.
Yep.
And then I tend to leave mine all throughout autumn because I love that bronze foliage with the floaty seed heads. And then come end of autumn, early winter, you literally hack it to the ground. I get a pruning saw, I hold it, make it into a giant ponytail with one hand and hack it at ground level with the pruning saw. And that's all you do with it once a year. And then you just leave it.
I'm assuming that you could get this as tube stock as well, right? Pretty easily.
100%. As tube stock, it's really cheap. You'll be paying $3 a tube.
Yeah, and that's where if you're on a budget, and as well, these sorts of plants, it's so much easier to maintain. I always go back to maintenance because that's my world, right? But it's so much easier to maintain weeds when you've got that clumping nature, because nothing's going to grow in between that unless you somehow get couch grass or something coming from underneath. But it's so much easier. I love that sort of stuff where it's like, give me one big job a year at this thing, then lots and lots of like little ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And my third one, it's not specifically a plant, but my third one would be when people interplant succulents with non-succulents. So I'm a big fan of things like the Senecio trident. Trident
Here we
blue.
go with the
Yep, that's it, Senecio. And then type in trident blue. That's it there.
There we go. Google knew what I wanted. Oh yeah, this guy.
I'm a big fan of this. It's almost a ground cover, but sort of a mounding ground cover. You can literally plant it by, I'm sure the nurseries won't like me for saying this, but once you've got it, break off a few twigs and shove those twigs in the ground and it'll keep growing.
Bunnings is never going to ask you back now to help
I know.
There. You've ruined their entire business model.
But look, it's a fancier form of chalk sticks. It's a more dense form of chalk sticks. If you've ever grown chalk sticks and found it sort of got a little bit bare and manky, try the trident blue instead. I just love its little tridents on the ends of its leaves. And it looks really great when you plant it next to, bright green things or things with textured leaves or movement, something like grasses. Yeah.
So you could get the Polar Lab as its clumping form, and you would have a really good color contrast just like that. And I've heard a lot of people, landscape designers as well, talk about using moving away from flowers for color and moving towards using plants that are already, you've already got the blue there, right? And on its own, it can look a little bit like it's not as stunning, but when you pair it with other things around there, the color contrast really does kick through.
Hugely. And you know what? I reckon if I can squeeze a fourth plant in, one of my other favorites.
How dare you?
I know. The smoke bush is it's particularly the purple leafed smoke bush, is one of my absolute favorites. Non-native, but it's big, blousy, smoky type flower heads are just incredible. Yeah. And then those purple leaves, it comes in a green leaf form as well. You get the purple leaves. It's a deciduous, it's deciduous where I am. And its leaves will bronze off like an autumn. So you'll get that lovely autumn colour. And then it comes back again and does it all over again. So
I do love those. I love those red-leaved sort of thick shrubs. Alternatheria is one that comes to mind. That's one's a bit cliche. I was going to ask you this too. Okay, we've asked you for your favorite. You got to tell me the cliche ones too. I'll start. I'm sick of agaves. All right, like, can we just stop with the agaves? I mean, the problem with the agaves is everybody plants them on the side of their garden bed, and then it grows out. I mean, there's different agaves as well, but
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact name of the one that. Anyways, the one that sort of has the long stem, and then the growth on top. Anyways, it always grows out into the the path of the mower. And I'm
Yep.
trying to mow someone's lawn, and I can't. I've got to go around it because if I knock it, I'm going to break it off. It'll never recover again. It doesn't bend. People,
Yep.
what are you doing? And then snails get on it, and you just have this ugly
Yeah.
leaf, and it will never grow back. It's just permanently ugly, and it's in just about. I don't know. Over here, it's like just rampant. I don't know if it's like in Melbourne. Maybe people are just listening to me going, "I've never seen one before." But
Well, look, here in Melbourne, they get I call it liquefied by the frost. So if you live in a frosty area with
right,
heavy
yeah.
frost, yeah, they'll get liquefied by your frost here. I'm trying to think of what's something that I can't stand: yuccas or cordyline.
Right. So
Um,
how about these ones?
I can't. Though, as an indoor plant, that is tolerable.
The Kariba black behind me, I think is what it's
Yes,
called. But
you can barely see it behind you. That's how dark it is.
that's it.
Can't stand either of those planted out in the gardens. What's another one?
Well, how do you feel about dracaenas then? Because some dracaenas look exactly like yuccas.
Yeah, true.
I understand the yucca itself has, especially the big one, the elephant
called
types or
yucca, for
whatever it
God's
is.
sake.
Exactly. They named it correctly. They knew
Yeah,
what they were
did.
doing. And then they were telling everybody, don't get this, right? They were telling you this is disgusting. And everybody still bought it. And whenever the thing about the yuccas is, which the dracaenas are better at, dracaenas, I'm not going to Google this because then I'm pushing my luck for some technical difficulties. But dracaenas have that same sort of like grassy look to them.
Yeah.
But they're not as pointy and they're not so threatening to your eyeball as you walk past them. There's some sort of give to them. But
yeah,
yuccas,
yeah. The detail is in the name there. I think, look, my only other big thing is when people put one plant and then it's just mulch all around it, like that.
yeah.
You drive
It's
past
usually a
and
yucca, isn't it? It's
well,
a yucca
often
or
it
a
isn't.
agave or it's a dracaena or something.
I just, like you'll see people and they have a front yard and they have a front lawn, and God, there was a place near me where I drove past every day and I just wanted to knock on their door and go, can I underplant your rose? It's really boring. They'd cut like a 3-meter diameter circle in their front lawn and turned it into a garden bed. And then in the middle of that planted one standard rose bush.
Was that an iceberg as well? A standard iceberg?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, because I'm sick of icebergs as well.
Yeah, and you're just like, no. Like, so yeah, probably my pet peeve is when people leave planting space. There's all this stuff that you could do, and yeah, no.
Well, there's two competing thoughts that I've heard out in with garden design, and I think one is becoming more popular. One was like you want to leave, I guess, some sort of space, because you don't want to overcrowd. Overcrowding is allows for some sort of pests and that lack of airflow, which more moisture over time causes fungal diseases. And then some people are like, no, really crowd it. As long as you've got the right plants, then you don't get so many weeds and, there's less maintenance. You don't have to mulch it so much, all that sort of stuff. So which camp are you in?
I'm in the overcrowd a smidge. So
And that's the one that I think is winning now. Like people are more going towards that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I always say to people, and again, this is something I say in Sprout School. So if the label says plant 40 centimeters apart, I'll plant them 30 centimeters apart. So I always take a bit off.
So here's the thing, right? It's like, wouldn't the manufacturer, what am I calling the nursery, want you to have a shorter spacing so that you've got more plants? Like, come on, guys, get your act together.
I know. I do find
Make
that a
yourself
bit
some money.
Sometimes. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, you can also look at how wide plants grow as well, just to check, I suppose, that the label is telling you the best spacing. But you sort of think, well, if you have a plant, if they're telling you to plant them 40 centimeters apart and they grow to 40 centimeters wide, you want some overlap. You want them touching. You don't want them looking like little tin soldiers that are lined up with giant gaps in the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I also think so. The downside of the overcrowding is when people who don't have experience,
Mm.
like they're not overcrowding in it. Well, they are overcrowding, but they're not. It's not a thought out like, okay, it says 40 centimeters, let's go 30 centimeters. It's like we've planted like. Well, I'll tell you this story. Do you know Canadia prostrata, the native ground cover?
Mm. Oh, okay.
I'd,
Yeah.
I'd never.
Canadia.
Is that yeah? There you go. I'd never heard about it until I did this job, right?
Yeah. So
But
running postman is its common name.
there you go. It gets massive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like meters, and then you've got your classic pig face,
Yep.
and anyway. So we're doing this job. This was for a refinery, right? Okay, it
Oh.
was 2 hectares. We were the maintenance crew. 2 hectares of basically car park and driveway stuff. So they wanted really easy to maintain stuff. They didn't want to have they didn't want the place looking immaculate, but they didn't want it looking bare. And so they've called this landscaping company. I don't know if they got paid by the plant. I don't know why, but they planted 67,000 tube stock natives in 2 hectares. Okay,
Whoa.
so that's 3.5 plants per square meter, basically, right?
Okay.
3 point something plants per square meter.
Okay.
But they haven't separated them out at all. They've just gone, we want 12,000 kangaroo paws, and I don't know what the numbers were, and
Oh.
3,000 dwarf banksias, and a couple of she oaks and stuff like that. But it was just basically they had these line of she oaks down the driveway, right,
Mm.
and a couple of like red gums and things like that, and the rest of it was just like it seems so random. And so you've got this Canadia prostrata growing over this kangaroo paw, and then the pig face is they've planted a pig. No joke. The main entrance of the property, they've got like it's said in the landscape design, 400 pig faces or whatever, and they've planted these tube stocks. No joke, less than the width of my hand from the edge of the path. So half
Right.
of it is going to grow over the entire path. And it was like, we want low maintenance. And so we're going to plant natives. And it's like, this is incredibly high maintenance because
Yeah.
every time we rock up, we got to clear your paths. And every time we rock up, we removed thousands of plants after about 6 months because we were just like, you can't like, and most of them were the Canadia prostrata or Canadia, whatever. I'm saying it wrong.
No, that's all right.
Maybe I should look this up while I'm saying it, but it just grows so big and it's a beautiful plant. But it was like in the vicinity of where it was growing was like 15 other plants, and it was like just gonna.
It's a bit of a thug. Yeah, I've got it growing over a cliff face. I literally have a cliff face behind my house because my house is cut into the side of the hill.
Yeah.
So I planted it at the top of the cliff face, and it's growing down over the cliff face, but it tries to invade my dahlia bed. So I do have to constantly get out there and yank bits off it. But it's a really pretty ground cover.
It is very when it flowers.
Yeah, but like if you need to cover a cliff face, if you need to cover an ugly retaining wall, an ugly rocky outcrop or something like that, it's perfect.
Yeah, and I think it. You tell me if I'm wrong because I just pulled them all out, so I don't really know what it's like to maintain them because I'd never heard about them before. This is like 5 or 6 years ago as well. This wasn't last week, but they don't look like they need much maintenance at all. You just sort of let them go and that's it.
Yeah. So just let them do their thing.
But that's the thing. Yeah. It's like you can take a plant that is low maintenance and make it extremely high maintenance if you just do something stupid with planting. So
yeah, exactly. So they are a bit of a thug. So plant them in a spot where they can run free. There's probably some cultivars that aren't as thuggish. It might be worth checking that out. Quite often, breeders have obviously gone, well, we want the running postman, but we don't want so much of a thug, so we're going to breed a nice compact version. So do look around because
this one was massive. Like they were probably 4 meters. After a year or something, the ones that we had left, it was like a 4-meter circle of just. I was like, man, you could have done the entire place with I don't know 12 of these plants. You could cover all 2 hectares with them, you know, so that why did you get 67,000 other options? Save some cash money here.
Exactly.
Do you know, I do hear it every now and then where people will say things like, man, I love podcasts. I hate the ads, right? Can you give me 5 seconds to try and change your mind on this for a second? The reality is, if you love the podcast, love the ads, listen to the ads and support the ads, whether it's me or anybody else. And the reason is the reality of this model of business is that the podcast does not survive without the ads. If you love what we're doing at the podcast, here are 2 things you can do to support us. 1, jump on the lawn shed. We talked about them before. You're probably busy mowing a lawn, cutting some hedges, you know, driving, something like that. Jump on the lawn shed, make a trade account, just check out the products that they have. Say you found us through the Australian Lawn and Garden podcast. You don't even have to buy anything right now. When you do need something, jump on there and that will support us. The second thing is our Patreon account. If you're not somebody who wants to buy products or you want to support in an even, you know, a more direct way, jump on Patreon. You can support us through 2 things. 1, very topical. You can buy me a Pepsi Max every month, or you can buy me a Zinger box every month. Full disclaimer, I don't actually spend that money on those specific things. It's actually more likely to go to things like the costs of actually running the podcast. But it's just a fun, lighthearted way of going about it. So honestly, if you want to have the podcast keep going, there's a huge amount of time that goes into this. If you have learned anything that is worth $5, jump on Patreon, you know, support us to that amount. If we haven't done anything of any value, then don't support us because we don't deserve it. But I hope we have done something. Jump on there, support us, help us to keep going. It's a lot of work, and I'm sure you can understand. Anyways, let's get back into the podcast. So I was going to ask you, Chloe, so we're talking about a lot of native plants there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's popular for people to choose the native plants. Makes a lot of sense. But there are still some plants that are non-native. Maybe, you know, we're not talking roses or something like that, but they do things that maybe that certain flowers or, you know, they have a look that you can't get in the native realm, but they are actually still really hardy, really easy to maintain. Are there some of those that you think are underrated, or maybe some that people don't know about that can be really well utilized in Australian gardens?
Yeah. Look, I'm just thinking of my own garden here. I've got a number of non-natives. Like, I'm not 100% a native gardener by any means. I love mixing them together with non-natives. I love using locally indigenous where I can, but at the same time, I love just, you know, having an
Yeah,
eclectic
of
mixed
course.
garden. I'm just trying to think of some of the great examples. I do love buddleias for their flowers that just the butterflies and the bees go bananas for. I have a buddleia, I think it's globusa or globa, or I'm going to have to look that up now.
I'll be
But
looking it up.
you do the lookup for me. But
Yeah.
it's got the amazing. So buddleias normally have those pinnacle type flowers on them, which people know them. Quite often they come in purples. I don't do purple in my garden. Well, I don't like purple. That's it. So this particular buddleia I've got, and I just think it is the happiest flower. It's got these button yellow buddleia, button yellow tight flower heads that look a little bit like billy buttons.
They do.
Yeah, so I absolutely adore this guy. It's quite a large shrub. And the bees, if I walk past that when it is in full flower, it is humming. Like the whole plant is buzzing.
Well, that's what this photo is showing here. It's almost like a lantana, almost. Like, I mean, it's
So
different, but it's like, you know, lots of tiny little flowers together.
they're not,
It's
and
like a
they're not
pom pom.
super tiny. They're probably the size of, like a chuppa chup. They're the size of a chuppa chup.
Okay. But if I look in here, the little tubular, I'll zoom in again.
Yeah, the little tubular components of the flowers.
It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like a pom pom of maybe
It is
400 flowers or something like that, but it's the size of a
exactly.
chuppa.
As a composite flower. So yeah, I love that one. It's got lovely silvery foliage. And then I'm a sucker for yellow flowers. If anyone follows me on Instagram, and if anyone is watching, I am wearing a yellow jumper.
Yeah.
So yeah, I absolutely love yellow. I do have a white flowering buddleia with the traditional pinnacle type flower heads as well. So I do love buddleias. Their bees and butterflies love them, and they're a pretty hardy plant. I don't really cut back the yellow pom pom flowering one that hard because I like it getting big and quite unruly. But the white flowering one that I have, I cut it back pretty much. I just cut it in half at the end of flowering every year. Over winter time, it
obviously
will,
horizontally, you cut it in half. You
yeah,
don't just literally straight down the middle
no,
in half.
horizontally. I cut its top off.
Yeah.
And for me, my white flowering buddleia is semi-deciduous for me where I am. So it loses most of its leaves over winter, but then springs back with gusto come spring. So I'm a big fan of that one.
Do you know what? I've learned something there. I didn't even know they existed. I'll be honest.
Oh, really? Well, the
Yeah,
fascinating thing the
you go.
fascinating thing with buddleias is my husband is Irish, and we've got to Ireland a fair bit, and my sister-in-law is a horticultural therapist. So she uses horticulture
Gee
to work.
whiz.
Yeah, I know. And I said to her, "Oh, I love all the buddleias everywhere in Ireland." She goes, "Those weeds?" And I went,
Yeah.
She goes, "Oh my God, they're like a noxious weed." And I'm like, "Oh, are they?"
Yeah.
Not in Australia, they're not.
A weed is just a plant that's in a space that you don't want it to be, really.
Exactly, I know. So big fan of those. Also bamboo, but clumping bamboo.
Yeah,
Huge fan of clumping bamboo. Non-invasive clumping bamboo. The thing I like about clumping bamboo is its height. So we've got a spot out in our place where, so our garage is under our house. So our kitchen window is technically on the second story, if you can picture that.
Yeah.
And as I said before, we love our neighbours, but our kitchen window literally looks over the neighbour's backyard. And so when we moved into our place,
well, you're glad that you do love them. Imagine if you did. I hate my neighbours, and every time I cook pasta, they're bloody there.
Right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, when we moved in, I thought I need something in this spot to just fill that in. I want to be looking out my window on a wall of green. And apart from like literally erecting some sort of, trellising system or some sort of a fence, which wasn't really possible, I knew I needed a plant that could literally grow to 12 meters tall, wow. second story sort of height. And I wanted it to grow fast. So I put.
Is that bamboo hamii that you've got?
Oldamii, yeah.
That's the one. Yes.
Yeah. So bamboo oldamii, it's really fast growing. Here in Melbourne, it pretty much only grows in summer. So it does all of its growing in summer. So when I'm fertilizing my lawn, I chuck on some lawn fertilizer to it as well. And you can almost see the new shoots growing each day. It's quite crazy. But it's managed to put on 12 meters of growth. It now is taller than our house, and it's 6 years old.
So I've got a story about old hamii, or however you pronounce it.
I know, however you pronounce it. Someone just on that, sorry. Someone once said to me, I think people should be a lot kinder about the pronunciation of botanical names, because technically they're a made-up word half the time. So
yeah, I'm the least judgmental with that, because as you can tell from this podcast, I'm not very good at spelling or saying things right. I think I've pretty much butchered everything I've said so far.
You're right. Sorry.
I love that one. And I was at a landscape supply shop not too far from where our warehouse is. And they had these in bags, the big planting bags, right?
Yeah.
And they were probably 4.5 meters tall, something, so taller than a house.
Mm-hmm.
And they had them for like, I don't remember what it was, but it was like $120 or something. So like insanely cheap for something that big. Yeah. And I was like, I'm going to try and grow this in my warehouse. And so, because my warehouse roof was 6.3 meters or whatever, so huge.
Yeah.
And so I bought a massive pot, and it almost worked. I was happy. We have the what's the word? You know how like the plastic roofing, so the light comes through.
Laser light.
Whatever. And I bought 2 massive LEDs to shine on to give the artificial light, and it didn't grow, but it maintained through summer, and then when winter with the reduced hours, it just wasn't enough light, and I was like, I'm not committing to another 2 or 3 artificial lights to make it grow. But when it was in there, it was a flippant statement for someone to walk into a warehouse, like 4 concrete walls, and you've got this like 4.5, maybe 5 meter tall, like, plant, anything living, but bamboo just in this.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the heck? So it was awesome when we had it. And anyways, I wish it had have worked, because it's quite a, I don't know, there's a feel about it where I don't like the ones that are too thin and sort of twiggy.
Yep.
But the thicker bamboos, there's a majesticness to them. It's like,
Yeah.
I feel like I am in the jungle, you know? So
yeah, especially if you strip off the lower, the lower parts of the stems, if you cut off any of the little side shoots, so you get that lovely bare stem effect.
Yeah. I find one of the things that is my pet peeve with the gardening industry, you're talking about people judging for not having the right pronunciations, right? One of my pet peeves is the native Nazis that are
Okay, yeah.
online. And I don't know if you've experienced this as much as me, but because I'm a lawn lover, right?
Mm-hmm.
And lawn is like the Antichrist, for those people who are native only sort of people. And it's like, if you have any plant, and this is an extreme, very, very few people held this, but they do comment online sometimes. I don't know what your thoughts are, but I'm just having a little rant here, all right? But it really frustrates me when people are like, if you're not planting natives, you just basically, you don't care about the environment, or you're just wanting to waste water or this or that. Because sometimes there are some natives, tick the box, it's a native, but it's like from Queensland, and it gets rain all the time, and it's like, it's not water wise at all, but it's native. I've got it. It's just as water hungry as something that might be from Europe, right? And obviously, there's a limit to that, but also, like, the people who actually love their gardens and want to have something that is a bit more water hungry, they're probably really much better for the environment than someone who's just chucking concrete down, or just gravel and creating more heat and things like that. So for me, and the other thing as well, it really frustrates me when people post like, you should get rid of your lawn and plant wildflowers, because that's such a European thing. Because it's like, what, wildflowers here? Do you mean like thistle and oxalis? Like, they're the wildflowers we've got.
Look, you could plant your beautiful West Australian wildflowers, but could you then sit out there and, roll around on the grass with the kids? And could you have like fun outside playing golf with your kids? No. I'm a bit like you. I'm passionate about people basically planting anything. Like, to be honest, put a plant in. If that plant be grass, then sure. But at the same time, I'm not a fan of just grass, so, don't just plant grass, put bordered garden beds around it. You touched on it, the benefit of grass and having lawn around our homes, that benefit of reducing the heat island effect. So, cooling the air and the atmosphere around our homes. It's a carbon sink because it's absorbing carbon dioxide. It's still a plant. And I think lawn gets a bad rap as well, because people are like, oh, it needs so much chemicals and so much herbicide, and it needs all of this, input to it. I've never sprayed anything on my lawn. Never. I don't use any form of herbicide, and my Sir Walter Buffalo is happy as Larry.
If you are consistent with your maintenance, because that's the thing. Like with my lawn, I've been doing this as an experiment, right? Yeah. And I don't have any aversion to using chemicals properly. Like, people will. It doesn't make sense to neglect your lawn for 6 months and then do a crazy amount of work on it and then neglect it for another 6 months. If you're really consistent with how you're going about things, you can basically, a healthy lawn will outcompete most weeds, because those weeds, except for the grassy weeds, they are difficult, but the broadleaf weeds don't like being chopped.
No.
They really don't. Whereas the lawn can handle it, you know. So
Yeah.
if you're just cutting regularly, you can keep on top of it. And yeah, I don't think I've really put anything down. I have when I say I hadn't put anything down for 2.5 years, I have done one spot spray in maybe
Mhm.
the last 2 years or something like that for the oxalis that was coming through.
Yep.
But the rest of it, no. Like it's you just regular maintenance, regular mowing. And the
Yep.
other thing as well over here, now the last, if you are on top of like with lawn, right? Because this is
Mm.
really that's my little niche in the market, which I love, is with lawn. If you're doing things like aerating, putting wetting agents down, and
Mhm.
fertilizing, those three things, you get way deeper roots and you get
Yep.
a lot more resilience because your plant, like even just fertilizing, people underestimate how just having a healthier plant just to start with is going to be able to withstand any type of stress, right?
Yep.
So cold weather, disease, stress, all that sort of stuff. And so there was not last summer, but the summer before, we had the hottest summer we ever had on record. And
Oh,
I
wow.
didn't turn my sprinklers on until November the 11th,
Mhm.
right? And then I had it on one watering day till mid-December, and we don't get rain basically, right?
Yeah.
In Perth,
WA. Yep.
in summer, we'll get a storm here every now and then. Last year, entire summer, 4.5 months or whatever it was, we had 1.6 mil of rain for the entire time.
Ooh.
So like I'm watering once a week up
Yeah.
till mid-December. Then I did the 2 and did some extra hand watering when it was really hot, and then waters back off again in March, right?
Yep.
So if you know what you're doing, you can handle that. And what frustrates me is people, I guess, virtue signaling, because they're like, look, I've got a complete native garden, but they're still doing their 2 watering days. It's like they're not actually using any less water. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
just me ranting and getting grumpy at people.
No, look, and
But
my other big thing is, if a good, healthy lawn encourages you to get out in your garden, enjoy your garden, whether that be with family, friends, or just yourself, and you then want to be in your garden more, so you then think, oh, I'm going to build a garden bed over here, or I'm going to plant a veggie patch over there, because you actually just enjoy being out in your garden. Isn't that a good thing?
yeah,
You know?
100%. And
Yeah.
you also will naturally want to go towards, because it depends on how much free time you've got. But if you're a busy person, you're like, I sort of want natives because less things go wrong with natives. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like you might have a couple of feature pieces where you'll put effort in. Maybe you love some roses, so you'll have some roses. But
yeah.
most people who just love gardening, they actually care about the environment. They care about that sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
anyways, that
For
was
sure.
just I saw this person. The reason why that came up is last week I saw someone apologizing for having lawn online, but they wanted to make it look green. They were like, "I know you should have put natives in." I was like, "You don't need to apologize for anything. Like it's all good."
No.
So
Yeah. Oh dear.
we touched before on Cert 3. You had someone come through your course,
Mm-hmm.
and they did a Cert 3, and they found that they learnt more. I remember there's a guy who works for me now who's Cert 3. And I remember we were talking about it because I've never done it. And
No,
he
me
said,
neither.
there we go. We can be friends then. Look at us. You know,
I've got a grad dip in Hort, so not a Cert 3. I don't know.
I
I
don't
don't
have
actually
anything.
know.
I have a
Uh,
YouTube degree in Hort. So, but the guy who had done the Cert 3 who works for me, he's got maybe 15 something years experience now.
mhm.
But he was like, I learned more in his first job in the first 6 months. We're actually out there doing stuff,
Yeah.
as I think he was doing landscaping in the first 6 months of his career, than he did in the Cert 3. And one
Mm.
of the things he mentioned to me, which is just secondhand information, and I want to hear your opinion on this. The industry is so broad.
Yeah.
You've got reticulation, retaining walls, lawn installation, working in a nursery, maintenance, right? Like huge number of things that
Mm.
any course that's trying to be general
Mm.
is actually, you can't. It's just so shallow. It's got to be wide, cover a lot of things. So you never really go deep on any of the subjects. And so when you jump in, you go from doing your Cert 3 into something that's a job that's a lot more specific. Say working in a nursery, you're going to learn so much more at the nursery.
Totally.
Yeah. What's your
Yeah.
experience with people who yourself, people who have some level of education versus those who don't, and all that sort of stuff.
Look, I think you're right there. So much of it is on the job learning, or, you become passionate about a particular area. So therefore you become more knowledgeable in that area. I'll go around to friends' houses and they're like, oh, because you're here. And I'm like, oh no, here we go. And then they come
Yeah.
out and they're like, so what's this tree? And I'm like, it's a eucalypt. And they're like, yeah, what sort? And I'm like, maybe it's a box.
Yeah, I'm the same.
And they just look at me like I've got two heads. And I'm like, well, I don't know what they all are. But I said, look, if you can give me some nuts, if you can give me some leaves, I'll take a photo of the bark. I'll go and look it up in Costerman's, book, and I'll work out what it is. So people presume that because you're a horticulturalist, you therefore should be able to identify every single eucalypt that they plant.
Yeah,
It's just like, no, I can tell you the ironbark, and I can give you, I can often
yeah.
group it, but am I going to be able to pinpoint precisely what it is? Probably not.
It reminds me of this meme I saw yesterday, where someone's put up a post where it said, my great talent is identifying birds. And someone's then posted a picture of a specific type of bird and gone, okay, well then what is this one? And they're like, yes, that is definitely a bird. It's like, yep, you got it right. You identified that is a bird.
Yeah.
I find it interesting as well with clients where, and I found it is a big weapon to, and I recommend anybody who's a contractor to go around your neighborhood and find the plants. If you find the plants that are the most common, right? So
Absolutely.
for me in WA, it's like viburnum, lily pillies, lamandra, things like that. They're everywhere, right? Learn
Yeah.
them, because they're going to be your biggest bang for buck. But
Mm.
then there's these random ones you've never seen before, like this buddleia that I don't know. Maybe it doesn't suit. I don't know. Maybe I've seen it a million times. I'm not paying attention, but
Yep.
those sorts of plants where someone will be like, "How do you deal with that?" And it's just like, there's like, I don't know, 1 billion plants. What?
Yeah.
How many do you need me to know?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you guys have it over in WA, but here we have like an open gardens Victoria thing where people open their home gardens to the public. Do you guys have that in WA?
No, I mean, we have riffraff who might just be a little bit drunk and invite themselves into the
Invite
garden.
themselves into your garden. Well, if you do have some sort of an open garden thing, maybe there is that you just don't know about. Or if you're in Victoria, it's the most amazing program. It costs you like $5-10. You can go and walk around other people's gardens. They have, specific open days. But, if you search out places in your area, I sort of, if I'm looking for inspiration around my home, I might look, for gardens 10, maybe 15 Ks from my house. And yeah, just go and snoop them out on those open days. It's so valuable because, as you said, you go, oh, you can grow that near me. Okay, I didn't know that. Or you can even then chat to the person who owns the garden, because most of the time they're there as well, and say, I didn't think we could grow this in our area. What have you done? And they go, well, I had to put
water
it
it
in
24/7.
yeah, or I
Like
had
that.
to put it in a raised bed because it didn't like our heavy soil, or so
Yeah, that's
that,
awesome, because you're learning from the advice in the area, and that's what we talked about before about the group that you're doing. That is alongside your school, is you
yeah.
can talk to people, and there is a limit to my YouTube degree that I have in horticulture. No one's ever verified it, so but someone, and this is one of the reasons why I started the podcast, is there isn't that much for there'll be stuff on the veggie garden or stuff here and there, but it's really hard to find stuff that isn't European or American when it comes to
Yeah.
advice. And it's
Yeah.
like, give me some Australian stuff where we can talk about things. So yeah, but finding people in your local area, that's even
100%.
better.
Yeah, and like I'll actually do that in Sprout School once I know where people are from, or when I know the style of garden that they, aspire to, I'll post up in the Facebook group, check out these people on Instagram,
Right.
because either they're in your state or they're in a similar sort of garden that you're looking to try and create. Because so often, yeah, people will follow garden, professional gardeners or the landscape designers, or they'll follow people who are just completely from the wrong climatic zone, or, things that just don't suit them. So we do have a bit
Yeah,
of fun
yeah.
in the Facebook group sharing, well, I love this type of garden. And I'm like, right, go and follow these garden designers and go and check out these Instagram home gardeners.
Yeah. I thought you were about to say Instagram hoes there for a second.
Oh,
Check out these Instagram hoe. I'm like, whoa, man, I don't know about that. It's a bit different. That's a different podcast, that one. The other thing I've done, bring it back to something sensible, Luke.
yes.
No, we're getting a bit rowdy. I went around. We've got a massive commercial, or what would you call it? It's a nursery. What's the word I'm looking for?
Production nursery?
Wholesale. That's the word I'm
Wholesale
looking
nursery.
for.
Okay. Yep.
Massive wholesale nursery here called Banara Nurseries. It's actually the biggest nursery, group. There's two of them, but the
Okay.
one up north is the biggest nursery in the country.
Ooh,
Believe it or
fun.
not, here in WA. It's surprising. We've got to get them on the podcast one day. But they've got a southern depot that's about 15 minutes from my house, and it's just, I don't know, a huge amount of space of just plants and plants and plants and plants. I will walk around that place, and on a trade account, a 13 centimeter pot is like $6 or something like that for common plants. So very cheap, and because it's wholesale, it is mostly common stuff, right? They don't really do the weird niche stuff that you might find at other small nurseries that cost a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that's a really good bang for buck way to learn, is just go there, buy things, put them in your own garden if you're someone who's wanting to learn. And then when they die, or when they thrive, hopefully, you can go, well, I water this twice a week, and I do this and I do this and I do this, and these 6 plants really like it, these ones don't. And you treat it as if you were a client.
Yeah.
At least this is what I do. And then when it doesn't work out, you're like, well, that one needs a bit more attention, or and obviously don't be stupid and put the full sun thing in, full shade or something like that. But try and make it work. And I've done that over the years, and that's something that it costs you like $6 a plant, and you're just getting free education on what your own climate is like.
Exactly, and that's the same with things like tube stock as well, or seeds. Play with seeds. Have a play with plants from seed as well. When they're cheap or free or very low cost, you don't mind having a bit of a play around. And I mean, that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions when people say, oh, you're a horticulturalist, oh, you work in gardening, you must never kill anything. And I'm like, are you kidding me? No.
Yes. This is a graveyard for thousands of plants. They've just been dug out and put in the compost already.
I mean, that's how you learn. Generally I can tell you why I killed it. I neglected it. I, should have sprayed it for aphids and I didn't. I tried it in a spot. I was pushing its boundaries,
Yes.
I thought I'll give it a shot in this spot and see if it'll work. And it didn't work. But I tried it. I knew it wasn't the right spot, but I tried it.
Yes.
So,
I can tell you unequivocally that old Hamiai will not grow in a 6-meter tall warehouse without serious artificial light. I know that from experience. 90% of horticulturists could have told me that, but I'm the one who really knows it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You wanted to try. Yeah.
And it's fun. It's fun to try that sort of stuff.
Exactly, yeah. And people shouldn't be afraid to try, and they shouldn't be afraid to kill a few plants here and there. It's all part of the learning process. Totally.
You talked before as well about having those open invites into the gardens.
Mm-hmm.
You've basically created your own little thing with that, with your YouTube series Behind the Garden Gate, which is where you're just inviting yourself into people's gardens. I know, right?
It's so fun.
How do you, this is back to what my wife, when we were watching it on YouTube. How do you find the gardens, and do you organize with the owner like much, or is it just sort of, I mean, I'm sure it's not, but it appears there was this one episode where you just walked, like you're at the front, and it was one of the, I think it might have been the first or second one, and you just walk into this garden, and I'm like, I wonder if she knows that no one's there. She's just recording it. You know what I mean? Like, you've never asked anybody. You just go to someone's garden and start doing a video on their garden. They're sitting there eating their lunch. You're like, what the hell is going on here? Surely you do more organization than that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep, I do. So I pretty much reached out to garden designer friends and said, so I've got this harebrained idea.
Yep.
Everyone I've done so far has been a friend or, very well-known acquaintance, I suppose, if not necessarily a friend. And I just reached out to them, explained the idea, and they were all like, yeah, especially the first one, Nadia Cole. I was like, so Nadia, I've got this idea. I want to take a video around someone's garden. I'm going to do like a walkthrough. I'm going to explain like your design concepts, the plants you've chosen, why you've put them there. I don't want to talk to you, and I don't want to talk to the garden owner. I just want to walk around the garden. She's like, okay, here's one I did in Alphington. You can go and have a look at that one. And it's convenient for the garden designers because they don't have to be there if they don't want to be. Yep. And it's also convenient for the garden owner because, again, I'm not trying to talk to them. I don't want to see them. I don't want to speak to them. Look, I might go down the track and start interviewing them if they want to, but a lot of people are not comfortable being on camera. And I wanted just to be able to get in there, shoot the garden, and get out again as fast as possible. So, yeah, the concept is essentially that you're coming into, a private garden and having a good snoop around. I have only used Garden Designer Gardens at the moment purely because it was easiest. It was just an easy way to get a good-looking garden, and it was a fast way to get a good-looking garden. I do want to put the call out to home gardeners, and if anyone's listening and is in Victoria and would like me to come to have a look at their garden, please reach out. And I'm probably going to use Instagram as well to just put the call out and say, right, I need gardens. Who's interested? So yeah,
Joe would be an interesting episode. It might not be something you can do right now, but it'd be lovely to see if somebody did your sprout school like 3-4 years ago or something. Like, and in 3-4 years, you've got the before and afters, and you can go to their house. And it'd also be cool. I was just thinking from a business standpoint and a bit of tax. I was doing a lot of tax stuff last night, so it's in my head. But you could do a little bit of a road trip, couldn't you? Claim it on tax.
Hubby was saying that to me. So
there you go.
My husband does the videography and the drone work for us, and he was actually saying that. He goes, right, so now we need to like do some trips, and I was like, yes, we do.
Yeah. I was talking to a YouTuber who I get along with well, and I was like, we should do a series where we find the best lawn in Australia, right? And it's really just an excuse for our families to go on a really big holiday. We're not going to do it. Yeah, it's just like, how can we manipulate the tax game to give us a holiday? It's like we're on a holiday, and every sort of 5 days we'll look at someone's lawn and put something on YouTube. It's like, sweet.
I know. Well, I'm part of a local women in business group, and one of the girls in there is a Pilates instructor, and she was packing up her family to go in a caravan, and they were going to drive up the eastern coast of Australia. And every time that they stopped at a caravan park, she'd booked in multiple Pilates lessons in the caravan park.
Smart lady. Smart move.
That's genius. Like, right, how do I do that with gardens?
Exactly, yeah. You take tube stock with you and you just plant at someone's house.
So,
charity.
Like, we could have a roadshow, a behind the garden gate roadshow. So
that would be cool.
Yeah, I think it's definitely got a lot of potential. I do want to do some more like vlog style as well. That is in my garden. So I might call that behind my garden gate. So I thought I might, just actually, film me doing stuff in my garden.
Your garden gate isn't protecting a whole lot from the view, though, is it really? Like most people have to, because you're talking about you got to get behind the garden gate to see it, right?
Yeah,
it's on the hill. You just see
it.
But
you can't see it from down on the road.
Is that because there's a heap of trees?
Yeah, if you're down on the street, you cannot see it at all. I actually was in a local shop to us the other day, and the shop owner, she said to me, were you the girl that was just on Gardening Australia the other week? And I went, yeah, that's my garden. She's like, where the hell is your garden? And so I described where it was, and she's like, are you serious? I walk past that like every second day. She goes, I had no idea that was there. So yeah.
Well, you touched on something just before that I wanted to talk about, which is you talk about women in business. Now, this is episode 20 something, 24, 23 or something like that. You're the first lady we've had on the podcast.
I did notice that when I scrolled back through your previous podcast, and I was like, Luke.
Sexist pig. No, the story behind it is there is not. So we actually started recording another podcast with a landscape designer who's female, and there was a huge delay, like in the internet. So it was like I
Oh,
would talk and it'd be like 3 seconds. Honestly, it'd be like, "Talk."
oh no.
Now she hears me. And then she talks, and then now I hear her.
Ugh.
And we actually have another lady lined up on, this is Friday? Yes,
Okay,
Monday.
good. Yeah.
So we're finally getting ladies on, right? And it's the thing is, my experience now, it might be uh, because the maintenance world might be different than the landscaping world, or
Okay.
actually the landscape what are the words I'm looking for? Construction might be different to landscape design. You
Mhm.
know, a lot. I do find that a lot of ladies who have a gardening hobby absolutely love like my sister-in-law, for example, love the herbs gardens, growing, your own food and veg stuff. So it might
Mhm.
just be the world I'm in. But out of the people who have worked for us over the years, I would say 98 97% of applications, just on gut feel, are male,
Yeah.
right? There is so few ladies who work full time in the industry, even
Yeah.
though ladies absolutely love the gardens, right?
Mm.
So do you feel like you're a bit underrepresented? That's not even a word. Underrepresented, or is it just my side of the industry where people are actually out in the field working
Look,
on
I
maintenance?
mean, I could straight away when you said ladies who do garden maintenance, I can think of 3 or 4 off the top of my head, that I either know personally or I follow them on Instagram. So there's definitely, female garden maintenance people out there. In the garden design, landscape design is easily, I don't think females are underrepresented there at all. There's definitely a huge number of them. Whether it's 50-50, I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But I'm just thinking at the Flower and Garden Show, I would have said that there was easily 50% of the gardens that I saw were female designed.
Yes, I
Um,
want see. That's what I wonder about. Like, is I wonder if it's just, I don't know. It's just where maybe it's a WA thing, maybe it's not. But I also find there's like with the people who listen to the podcast. Um, well, but here's my feeling as a general rule that
mm,
men love the lawn side of things on average, right?
okay,
Obviously,
yep,
there's outliers,
yep.
and ladies love the garden side of things on average. Obviously, there's outliers, right? And so I don't know. I wonder if, because maintenance is just, obviously there's just a lot of cutting lawn
Mm.
involved with maintenance. I wonder if that's why it attracts more people who are male. Don't know.
Look, it could even just be, I think all trades in general are having like that resurgence in females, well, not even a resurgence, just like females becoming more interested in trades. Um, and I feel like there's definitely more and more people going into it that are female, into trades in general. I often find with horticulture, it's not necessarily something people think of. And I say that going back to like when when I was in year 12, and do you remember like at high school when you went to see the careers counselor and they got you to do like a quiz that told you the type of jobs that you should do?
Yep.
And they ask questions like, if would you rather care for someone with a bleeding arm or pull weeds? And I'm like, stuff the person with a bleeding arm. That's disgusting. I'll go and pull the weeds. Um, and they'd ask you those kind of questions where they were obviously trying to work out, would you rather, work in an office or would you rather work outdoors? But not once, whenever I did any of those surveys in year 12, did it come back and say horticulture. I would
Yeah.
get things like park ranger. I would
Oh
get
wow.
like marine scientist, environmental scientist. Never,
Because there's a lot
ever
of those
once.
jobs going around, isn't there? It's like so many
Never.
horticulture jobs, and what, 4 marine scientists needed for every 1,000 gardening jobs, and they're like, marine scientist might be a good angle
Yeah.
for you.
So look, I don't know if it's any different now at high school, but I just sort of think to myself, like, what? Like,
Yeah.
how is that possible when I answered that survey back in year 12 the same way I'd answer it now? Stuff the person with a bleeding arm. I could never be a nurse. I could never be like an architect that has to sit in an office a lot and do a lot of drawing or stare at a lot of, computers and technical drawings. I could never do that. But not once did it ever suggest horticulture. So I often think that there's that people just don't think of it.
I also find that it's underrated in so many aspects, because the problem with horticulture is and we talk about this a lot on the podcast, but the award rate for horticulture is so low because it has to cover people who are literally doing very simple work, right? And then you have people who do very technical work, solving problems, all that sort of stuff. And what they do deserves a higher hourly rate, but it's under the same award. And
Okay.
so it's hard to grow into the industry and have, other than, the design jobs or things like that, as a maintenance person or someone who works on a construction team, it's a hard job with not a whole lot of pay. And so there's a difficulty to that as well. But the upside to horticulture, I think, is there's a lot of one percenters that people don't appreciate, like being outside, actually working physically. There's amazing job satisfaction when you do a job and you turn around at the end of the landscaping project or the maintenance job you were doing, and you go, "This didn't look this good when I started. Like, this looks amazing," or like your friends who you're looking at their landscaping designs, they'll chuck it in. And usually, if their client's got some form of a budget, it'll be small plants now, but 3 years from now, they come back, they drive down the road. It's an amazing There's all these things that you can't really get with money. And I've found that, people, they get attracted to a career because when they're 17, 18, someone tells them, well, this is what you can earn. And then you'll find a lot of people listening to the podcast, they're 35, or whatever. And all of a sudden they're like, I'm sick of my job as an IT professional. I love being outside, or whatever it is, and we overvalue some things as career options and we undervalue other things. And
Yeah,
that's just what I've seen.
No, totally. There's a dad in one of my son's basketball teams. I got chatting to him the other day because I saw him driving around with a big trailer attached to his car that had all the gardening implements sticking out of it. I said, "Oh, are you landscaper, garden maintenance?" He goes, "Yeah, I just started my own garden maintenance business just before lockdown." And I said, "Oh, how's it going?" And he goes, "Best decision I ever made. Love it." He said, he's just happy. He said he wants to get out of bed every day. And I think the thing about horticulture is people and plants, they just make you happy. Particularly people who like plants just make you happy. I find that so many, 99% of people in horticulture are just lovely to be around. They're friendly, they're open, they're chatty. And something about plants and being outdoors with them and being paid to play with plants makes you happy as well. Yeah. So no, I think if anyone's thinking about a career in horticulture, oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I think if anyone's thinking about a career in horticulture, just dive right in, because I think I saw it at MIFGS, the Flower and Garden Show. There was this giant spider's web of all the different career paths in horticulture, and it's huge. You might start with a Cert 3, or you might start just being a landscaper's labourer, or you can start anywhere, but just start. And then you can go, well, this really piques my interest. I'm going to, learn more about this or focus on that. And there's so many different avenues. Like, I'm technically, in the media, communication and education part of horticulture. So many different avenues. Sorry, that was my high horse rant about horticulture careers.
No. That was good. And I think that's a good finish to the podcast as well, because I think that, this is something that is underrated. It's enjoyable. People love what they do in this industry. And that's why it's important to do what you're doing with teaching people through your school and the things that you do like that, the podcast and stuff like that. Because my feeling is, and I could be 100% wrong, but with AI doing a lot of what would you call it, data jobs, writing jobs, things like that, I think gardening is going to become something that is going to be very hard to replace by robots or AI safely, especially using mowers and hedge trimmers and edgers and whip snippers and stuff. And I think that that's going to be a very interesting thing to see if people decide, actually, no, I hate working in an office. And I was sort of sold that a little bit because of the cash money side of things. And yeah, maybe there's a future there. So how can we support you, and how can we, if for people listening to this, they love this podcast, they want to know more about you, where do they find you?
So you can find me on social media, so Instagram and Facebook. If you search Been There, Dug That, like bean like the one that you eat, and there as in over there. Been There, Dug That is my business name. You can find my podcast on YouTube by also searching Been There, Dug That. And the podcast series, the YouTube series Behind the Garden Gate is up on my YouTube channel. In terms of support, look, I would love it if you jumped over to my YouTube channel, watched a few videos, definitely like, comment, subscribe, all of that. The YouTube algorithm is a bit of a beast. The more of that I get, the better. At the moment, Been There, Dug That is a love project. I make no money from it. I charge nothing to do the filming. As I said, my husband's filming it. I'm obviously a presenter, script writer, producer, editor as well. So it's a real love project, but it's something I've been passionate about wanting to do for ages. So I'm glad we decided to just get there and get it done. And yeah, follow me on Instagram. I'm pretty active over on Instagram. I'm always up for a DM chat if people want to do that as well, particularly if you want to talk about different career paths in horticulture, or if you've got a particular passion. I get a number of questions like that where people are like, I really want to do this, who do you think I should speak to? So I'm more than happy to answer those kind of questions. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Chloe. Really appreciate it. And guys, jump on her Instagram. Send her lots of cash money so she can make more being behind the garden gates. Hopefully, you get $1 billion at the end of this podcast. But in all seriousness, also sign up for the course. When you do the course, I think for those people starting out in the industry who don't have that much experience and they've done what we just talked about, they've transferred from a completely different industry.
Yeah,
you're probably getting a massive shortcut with that. And I don't know what it costs, but it's probably worth about $1 billion, isn't it? So that's how much you pay.
$349. And I was just thinking I should give you a special discount code so people can have, I don't know, what do we say, $40 off? How does that sound?
Sounds good to me. Awesome. And the discount, what's the discount code going to be?
I am just thinking, what can I make it? I am going to make it podcast 23. I'm going to write that down so I remember to activate it in the back end of my system. Let me write that down.
Podcast 23.
Podcast 23 is going to get you.
Having the code the Australian Lawn and Garden podcast is way too long. That's
way too long.
We'll make the entire thing a paragraph.
Yeah. So let's go. Podcast 23 will get you $40 off. And I can send you a tax receipt. So yes, it is a tax deduction if horticulture is your job. So yeah.
Sounds good. Cool. All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Chloe.
Thanks so much, Luke. Ta.